please welcome the incredible Jessica Dennehy.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I love everything you do. I love chatting with women. And so thank you very much for having me as a guest.
Yeah, this is awesome. I will say we tried for 30 minutes to record this on Riverside. So I'm shunning you, Riverside, for mixing this up for us today. But we're here and we managed to have this capacity in our day that we could make up for time. So that's the whole point of being selfish, right?
Totally.
I love it. Okay. So tell us a little bit about what you do and who you do it for.
All right. Well, I'm a business owner. I'm a small, we're just going to keep throwing things. How about that? I'm a small business owner. I own a couple of barbershops in New York, like a luxury brand of barbershops. I opened them 12 years ago after leaving my corporate career as a Wall Street attorney. And now I'm so enthusiastic about small business owners and making people live like a happier, more diversified life that I opened a consulting company called Pivot and Slay. And I've authored a bunch of books and I've spoken on a bunch of stages to help other entrepreneurs kind of do what I do and create a life that makes them really happy.
I love that. I feel like I don't want to say that's cliched, but it's like it's either like doctor to entrepreneur or lawyer to entrepreneur. There's something about those industries that just sounds so stressful. So the way that I see it is like you have these lived experiences that you almost had to go through that in order to create the thing that you're doing now, the thing that you're good at. Um,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for me, like I think a lot of people, we think that those careers will give us the success that we're searching for. But what I found is success for me is defined as me living a life that isn't just about one thing. It's multidimensional and it brings me happiness in a lot of different ways. That career was great and it made me feel like I had achieved a lot, but I wasn't able to live a life outside of that. And to me, that's not success.
Yeah, I love that. That's true. Like success is self-defined, and some people say it's about all the fancy things in life and the money. What I'm learning, especially having kids too, is that it's actually about the time and the freedom and the capacity in your life to do the things that you love to do. Right. So like
Yeah,
for
and
me,
in
it's
a
like,
way that makes sense for you too. Like I
yeah,
like sitting at a desk all day when I know I can do all the work I need to do in 4 hours. That doesn't make me happy. Like I want to go to the beach. Like I did my work, leave me alone. I'm going to the beach.
exactly. Yes. And then there's this construct too. And I think it was Ed Milet that said it made sense at one point in our economy that the 9 to 5 day worked, right? 'Cause that's when people were working in factories and it makes sense for some industries, but for most people, especially the knowledge workers, is they cannot be creative for 8 hours a day. It's an impossibility. Cal Newport even says most people can write creative writing and be creative for something like up to 57 minutes and on
Oh,
maybe
wow.
two intervals a day. So you think
Hmm.
about those creative moments in your day. Like for me, it's in the morning. And
Same.
I get all my cool pitch writing and content strategy stuff done in the mornings because as the day progresses, it's almost like I'm using up that creative fuel. And I have a tiny little creative tank in my brain and it
Yeah,
runs
I feel the
dry
same.
really quickly.
It's so important to know that about yourself because I think once you're in a position where you can have your own freedom in terms of what you do all day, every day, and you can manage it in a way that means something to you, you need to know what is right for you. And I'm with you. Like in the morning, all my heavy lifting is done by 1 p.m. Like after 1 p.m., things are going downhill fast in my mind, right? Like I know what tasks to save to that time that I can still bring my A game to. But writing is not one of them. Writing is a big like brain capacity moment for me, and I need all of my creative juices going at the same time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. So it's interesting that you went from being a lawyer to running high-end barbershops. What was that transition?
It wasn't really on purpose. I got to be honest. Like, it sounds great now when I can string it together like a story, but really in the moment, it was kind of a mess. I had this career I used to love, and then all of a sudden I was feeling bored. And at that same time, I had my first child, and I was feeling torn because I wanted to be with her a lot more. But I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. It just wasn't something for me that I knew would fulfill me enough. I knew I wanted both a career and a family life. I wasn't really sure how to make it happen. And so I started getting increasingly frustrated because my husband at the time, he had this idea to open our barbershops and he was getting a lot of joy out of that. Like he was finding his rhythm, he was in his creative momentum. And I was starting to get a little jealous about that because I hadn't found a rhythm for myself yet. And a couple years later, when the business really took off, that's when I decided to take the leap and leave my corporate job to own a barbershop, which my parents were like, what is happening right now? Like, you're going to give up being a lawyer and own a barbershop. But it really was a moment of trust for me. Like I was just feeling it. Like this is something I need to do. I'm not sure why. I just jumped. And I'm so glad I did it because it really allowed me the life I was searching for. I never would have thought it would be in that industry. But life takes you on a turn and sometimes you got to flow with it. So that's what I
So
did.
when you opened the shops, were you actually cutting hair or were you just managing?
Oh, no, no, no. I don't know how to cut hair. No. Even to this day, 12 years later, I'm not touching your hair with a scissor. What happened was he came up with this concept. I was like, that's great. And I gave him the money to start it up because that's what the business needed. And he created it. Like it was his masterpiece. And I was still a lawyer. I was funding our life with my salary while he built that up. And I was basically just the investor and the wife. Like I had no intention of being inside that business until I became so miserable at my job. He suggested I leave. And I was like, all right, maybe I'll do that. And when I left, we started looking for another location. And that's what I started to become more involved in it. And so I still can't cut your hair now. I just know how to run businesses and I do that very well. And so that's my role.
So I completely understand this because when I ran my first PR agency, I started it in 2012, having never pitched the media in my life. And I ran that for, I don't know, 6, 7 years. And in that time, I never once pitched the media. I knew how to manage the team, grow the business, do the strategy, motivate the team, and make sure that they were hitting their KPIs. But nope, never wrote a press release, never pitched the media because
It's alarming to people too. But the thing is, like any smart person will tell you, you don't need to know everything. You need to know how to surround yourself with all the people that know the things you need to know. That's a talent in of itself is cultivating that team that knows exactly what needs to be done because you have gotten the expert in every area.
totally. It's well, I'm going to plug my husband's book, Buy Back Your Time, because it's one of the first things that he talks about in the book is the value of having those people to delegate to. So virtual assistants, EAs, you name it. And it accelerates the growth of your business by way of giving you that freedom. Right. So he talks
Yeah.
about like buying back your time, not so you can just go wake surfing and on a trip. But sure, that's great. But buying back your time so that you're focusing on the more important tasks in your business.
And the things that you're good at, because I'm not good at those things. Like I need to do what I do best. And the only way I can do that is if everyone else is fulfilling the roles they need to fulfill in order to give me the space to do that. So 100%, I agree.
Yeah, love it. Okay, such an interesting though change from lawyer to barbershop owner, which is great. You're giving hope to a lot of people if they want to go and
Yeah.
open up locations for whatever it is that they do. So, there's a question when I read of your bio and the book that's well, at the time of this recording, it's not out yet, but it is out now. Which is called Selfish is a Superpower. Where do you think the idea of self-care became selfish?
So to me, self-care is not the same as selfish. I think selfish is a level above that. So self-care became a real hot buzzword because everyone got into the muck. They're working millions of hours, they're not taking care of themselves. And all of a sudden, like stopping to do something that your basic need needs to be met, either like resting or eating right becomes like self-care. Like that should just be automatic. And to me, it's sad that we live in a world where we have to tell people, take care of yourself. Like we should be doing that anyway. To me, selfish is even more than that. It's reconnecting with the person that you used to be before you identified as all the roles that you play. And what do I mean by that is like for a long time, I was guilty of saying, oh, what do you do, Jessica? Like, who are you? And I'd be like, I'm a mom. Yes, I'm a wife. I'm a business owner. I'm a lawyer. Those are things I do. That's not who I am. And in order to figure out who I was, because I lost myself in those roles along the way, I had to really get selfish and start to say to myself, well, what is it that you do for fun? What do you like to do? What do you like to read? Where do you like to go? Who are you outside of your career and outside of your parenting skills? Because there was a person there and now she's lost. And so to me, the real superpower is getting to know yourself again, because that's how you can make sure your happiness stays at a higher level. What happens when you're happy? Well, you get to infuse that energy into everyone else. Like your parenting is elevated. The way that you interact with the people you love is elevated. The way that you bring energy to your brand is elevated, to your business, to your job. Everything around you gets elevated when you're happy. And so by focusing on your own happiness, you actually do the exact thing you're trying to do, which is make the people around you happier. It's almost like they get a little piece of that. When we're focusing on making other people happy, that's when we run into trouble and losing ourselves and losing our own, brand of happiness.
Totally. So, real story that happened last night is I have had a very, very busy 2 days. Like, talk about working 2 12-hour days, because we're leading up to being a week offline, my husband and I, and it's just a lot of work to set all that stuff up. However, we were kind of side or derailed by being um, evacuated from our house for 10 days because of the wildfires, which it takes me a few weeks to be set up to be offline for a couple of days. So anyway, um, I was really catching up to all of these tasks, and I was finally getting things to start working. In that time, I was transitioning to a new bank, to a new accounting system, to just a new team that I know in the long term is going to pay off. But in the moment, it's like that heavy lifting. And somehow Stripe was holding all my payments and it wasn't depositing into my bank account. And I need to pay my team and things from a bank account. And it's lots of money that we're stuck in Stripe and we can't figure out why I can't get out. And I'm like panicking. I'm in here in my office, like crying. I was crying and I like told my husband to come upstairs. It's like 5 o'clock. Noah has to get his soccer in an hour and it's his night off because once a week we each have a night off. And I'm panicking because they still have to be fed and all this stuff's happening. And then he comes in here and men, they just like, he was just loved the fact that he actually had to fix something and not just listen to me. But he also came in with the fixing and the coaching mentality and unjustifying my emotions because I was frustrated at this. And my energy took a turn for the worse. And guess what happens when you have negative energy? It's like an amoeba, it just absorbs everything around you. My kids went from like being cute kids to being buttholes. And so last night we're all fighting and everyone finally goes to bed. This morning, Dan comes up to me and he's like, I'm sorry about last night. And I said, oh my gosh, me too. He goes, your energy was off and it affected everybody. And I said, I know. And I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. And the solution is not to be working those long days. It happens every now and then. I have not put myself first. I went and worked out maybe those 2 days, but hardly anything else. And so it reminds me of a quote that I used to say, that being selfish is the most selfless thing you can do. Because when mama feels good and she's happy and she's herself, everyone else, you just see it naturally, everyone else is prospering and hardly any fights. And there's
It's
no throwing
true.
computers against the wall.
The big moment of realization in that for me, because I didn't believe that for a long time. And I think I'm probably with the majority of people thinking that can't be true. But I'm a single mom. I have two little girls. And at the height of my divorce, when I was really miserable, then again during COVID, when my businesses were shut down, I realized that I was saying one thing to them, but doing another. So I'm like, yeah, go out and get your dreams. You can do anything you want, right? But I was blah. And they had this blah mommy coming home to them all the time. And I wasn't going out and doing what I was telling them to do. Anyone that has kids knows they're not going to listen to anything you say. They look at what you do and then they mimic it, even when they don't want to. We all have those moments where we're like, oh no, we're our mothers, right? And then we see something our kids do and we're like, that's our fault. Well, if you're leading a blah life, you're teaching your children, it's okay, put yourself last. No big deal. You never have to come first. Never, ever. Don't worry about your happiness. Your happiness doesn't matter. Everybody else's matters first, because that's how we're living our lives. And so I came to this point in my career where I was being asked to speak on stage a lot and I had to travel. And I remember like coming to this crossroad and being like, oh my God, I can't leave them this much. I'm their only parent. They're going to hate me. They're like everything's going to fall apart and it's going to be terrible. But something inside me was like, no, you have to do this. So just do it and watch what happens. So I did it and I started to travel once a month and I started to push my Pivot and Slate consulting company. I started to speak more, I started to write more. And slowly I became happier. And I would come home to them and I'd be happier. I go to my staff and I'd be happier. And I started to watch them change too. My staff started asking me more questions about business building and how I started and this and that. And my kids, they started taking more risks in their own life to be happier, like whether that's educationally, raising their hand more, socially, going out and trying to make more friends where that's hard for them. And I thought, oh my God, I'm showing them how to do this. And so if I never got selfish and chose me, I would have never seen this actually come to life in front of my eyes. And that's why I wrote this book, because it was such a powerful moment. I'm like, other people need to know this. Other people need to hear this because I wish someone told me.
Right. And it's funny, we look at these thoughts, the way that we do things, these habits and beliefs are largely inherited. And
Yeah.
so we think like the way, for the most part, and I'm generalizing, also, this is my perspective, is the way that we raise our kids might be because of our parents. Either you're doing exactly how you think how they raised you, or the opposite. You're going to do the opposite of how they raised you. In my mind today, I still think, oh gosh, like what would my mother say if, and my parents are visiting now for 3 weeks. So now it's like, yes, what does my mother say? She's right there. But it's like everything we do, even in my business, I'm like, gosh, what would my husband say to this? So we do things because we think it's expected of us, and it might go so hard against our values. But we don't want to do something different for risk of alienating somebody else or disturbing
Yeah.
that relationship. And it stops us from really leaning into who we are. And this is huge.
And,
Like in my industry in PR, it's like people show up online, they'll know that you're inauthentic if you're not speaking from your heart and your soul.
oh yeah. 100%. And I feel like it took me too long to realize that, because even in the way that I dress, like I'm much more feminine and free now. I used to have like this harsh look with like really power suits and like dark makeup. I never thought about it till I wrote this book. I was making up for some kind of like, internal insecurity that I'm in a man's world. And if I don't show up extra aggressive and extra masculine, I won't be taken seriously. So let me just put on that armor and grab my character and go out and be this person. And eventually I realized I was like alienating people and like no one was approaching me. I was like unapproachable. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm going through it in my mind thinking, you're not embracing who you are. Like you need to embrace that feminine side because that's part of you, right? So like I started wearing more dresses and heels and I dyed my hair pink. And this is just me. And I'm just like me all the time. And it feels so free. And it's also attracting the right kinds of opportunities to me because now I get to be who I am all the time. It's not being put on. It's not something I have to work at. It's just natural. And that takes so much pressure off. And it makes you expand and have all this extra time to put into things that are more meaningful.
Yes, and follow your dreams, start businesses that you've wanted to start. For me, that means firing clients I didn't want to work with anymore for many reasons, not because they were terrible, but maybe it was just the product wasn't fun to pitch or wasn't fun to create that strategy. It also meant for me, like I have friends who have their kids signed up for every single sport under the sun, and every week, like 5 days a week, they're at 2 or 3 different sporting events. And I look at them and like some of them love it, like some of them are so stressed out. So I told my kids, I go, you pick the one thing you love each season, and that's what you're getting. I'm sorry.
Same
And
for me. I did the same
soccer,
thing.
soccer and basketball. So that's 4 days a week that we're going to a practice or a game.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends when the winter comes here, we go snowboarding and skiing. It's a lot of activity. And so I thought this is very selfish of me to do this, but at the same time, I cannot be driving these kids all over the countryside. It's just impossible.
I think that the term selfish needs to be redefined because what's selfish about saying, I don't want you to be busy 24/7 because I want us to have a life together too. Like what's selfish about that? Like my daughter just started playing a sport this year. It's the first year that she's actually been interested in something. And I said to myself, I'm not forcing them to do stuff because I have to break my back to get them to all these things alone. And if they don't love it, what am I doing this for? So now that she has something, I'm like, but it's not on the weekend. So let's like keep the weekends to us, right? I'm not sending them out on thousands of play dates. I'm not trying to keep them active every second of every day. It's important for us to be able to sit in silence, in the quiet, without something to do, without somewhere to go. When I see the people who don't ever stop, I think, what are you running from? You know, because
That's my husband.
when I was stressed out, I can tell you I was nonstop all the time because I didn't want to sit and think about how to make myself better. It was too hard. It was too much work. I didn't want to do it. So instead, I just never stopped. And I think a lot of people are living their lives like that. And part of the book explains how sitting in the quiet was so scary and so hard. And now I can't live without it because I see how much I've been able to connect with myself, understand why I do things, why I say things, why I was saying yes, why I was saying no, what I was avoiding, what I should have been avoiding. And I have so much self awareness now that I don't want to live any other way. And I can't tell you how hard it was for me to get to the point where I was allowing myself to just sit there and be like stressed about it. Like it was hard, but I think there's a lot of growth in there that some people can learn from. And so in the book, I give a lot of strategies I use to get through that tough time of
Yeah,
self
I mean, I
discovery.
think you had a good point there about if you're so busy all the time, what are you running away from? Um, I like to bring my husband into these conversations because he's a go, go, go guy. But also in this is he's such an extrovert that what tops him up is being around people and having conversations. It can for me, but most of the time that depletes me. And I
Yeah,
also
which
wanted to
means you're an
say,
introvert.
yes, totally. But when it comes to kids, I feel like we're in this like the way that society is now is that we always have to make sure our kids are entertained, that they're busy doing
Yes.
something, play dates, sports, video games, whatever. Like when was the last time your kid came up to you and said, "I'm bored?" Right? And that to me, boredom is perfect. When my kids tell me they're bored, I get so excited and they know that they don't tell me anymore. I go, perfect, because your boredom is not my responsibility. You have to go and solve that problem. But it also means that they're not busy being trucked around to soccer or basketball or playing video games or play dates. It's like because there's a moment of pause. And then they eventually figure something out to do. They'll go play with their Legos or do something. But actually, the other weekend, my husband brought our boys downhill mountain biking. And then our nanny took our dog for the weekend. So my house was literally empty. And as adults, there is always something to do, right? Always something to do. I didn't feel like doing anything. And I actually sat down on the couch and I was like, I'm bored. And it is the first time in probably 13 years that I felt bored. And I loved it. And I did nothing. I didn't even want to watch TikTok or anything. I was like, this is great. I'm just bored. And I just literally just walked around, like tidied up and did stuff. Um, but I felt so good about it because I gave myself that space to just be bored. And with boredom
Yeah,
comes
I mean, I think
creativity.
there's a lot of things to think about, and I make time for the quiet now to think. Like and I tell my clients this, like you have to have time to think. It's not something we usually make time for. And I'm a big advocate of like not being on the apps a lot. Like I'm very present on social media, but if you look at the time I spend on the apps, it's like almost nothing because it's intentional. It's not because I'm bored. I don't know when the last time I was bored is. And what I can tell you is I had a concussion. I play volleyball a couple nights a week, and I got a concussion a couple weeks ago. And the doctor's like, you can't read, which killed me. I love reading. You can't look at the TV, can't look at your phone. You have to take time off for your brain the same way you would if you hurt your ankle and you wouldn't walk on your ankle. And I literally sat outside on my couch. I just observed what was going on because I had to. And I was like, at first, I'm like, this is going to be super boring. But what I realized is there's like a world out there happening if you just lift your head up. Like, lift your damn head up, and there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of are missing out on this. Like, it sounds hippy dippy, and honestly, probably wouldn't have done it if I hadn't had a concussion. But it made me realize, like, I'm very small blip on this earth, and I really need to start thinking about, like, when I get stressed, realize, like, it's okay. It's okay. Things are going to work out the way they're going to work out. Right. And there's something flowy about that. And going from the super type A lawyer who had to have control of everything, it's a big swing for me to come here and tell you I sat on my couch for 3 weeks looking at the stars and the sky.
Like an
You know
old
what I mean?
man watching the stars
Yeah,
walk
like
by.
that's is a big leap. It's a big leap. It's not that I think this stuff is easy. It's that I've seen the benefit of it and I want other people to realize on a much smaller scale, if you do this from time to time, you're going to excel at life. You're going to be happier and you're going to know yourself better. And instead of coming home and fighting with your spouse over something and not really knowing how it got so out of control, you're going to know. You're going to know why you said it, what the catalyst was, and how to repair it. That's huge.
Yeah,
But you can't know that if you don't stop.
I know. Oh, it's so true. Such a reminder. I think so. Once a week, as I mentioned earlier, that my husband and I each have a night off. So mine was Monday night. So on Monday nights, and it's blocked off in my calendar. And so my husband knows I don't make dinner, I don't clean up, I don't do anything. If I choose to participate, it's my choice. And those good nights for me, my definition of a night off is very cliched of having a bath and reading a book and eating chocolate. And my husband's is like, who am I going to call? Like, who am I going to go on the boat with? But I realize and recognize in the last couple months, I have not been doing that for myself. And it's that we've been traveling and stuff has been happening. But I know that even if I just have like that 1 or 2 hours to just fill up my own like self-care love tank, then I'm good to go. A good night's sleep. But the reality is like I need this more often than just one night a week.
And that's the thing. I feel in my book, I talk about this. What I decided to do was I make time for something fun every day. That looks different every day. Like for example, this week, I'm probably going to go to the beach on Friday. It's my book release date. I'm excited. It's something on a day I normally work a lot because the shops are busy. But I decided that this week, that's going to be what I do all day long. And that's cool. Today's fun was just that before this interview, I sat outside and I read like 15 pages of my book, like a book, not my book that I wrote, but like a book, right? Like that's all I'm going to get today. And that's okay. Like sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes it's a lot, but every single day I can at the end of the day be like, this is what I did for fun today.
Yeah.
This is what I did for fun. Because if I wait and I just allow that to happen once a week, that's not enough. It's not enough for me, especially when I'm doing the work of 5 people, right? Like, I don't know anyone else who's parenting 2 kids completely alone and also running 3 companies. Like, I don't know anyone else doing that. It's a lot. I need more than just one night, but if I don't create that time for myself every day, I might go crazy. So I've decided that that's how I'm going to live. And I think most people can fit in like 20 minutes for themselves every day if they really tried.
Yeah, but imagine we flipped it the other way where the like most productive work was the least amount of time of our day and that
Yeah,
there
that's the
was more
goal.
time for doing other things.
I mean, that's basically how I'm living. And it's funny because I'll be like, I was at the beach the other day and someone was like, what do you do? I've seen you here the last 3 days. I'm like, I own a bunch of businesses. They're like, well, why aren't you at work? I'm like, I did my work already. Like I work when I need to work. Like I'm doing what I need to do. It just doesn't look like what you think it should look like. But this is what it should look like for me. And I'm doing everything, all the balls are in the air. It's just on my timeline. So I agree with you. I think more people need to have a life that looks like that.
That's like my mom. She's almost 78. She can't really understand how it is that I run a business from my home. Don't you have to go to an office with people for the business to work? I'm like, yeah, well, offices are online now, mom. I have my people. We're not in the same time zone at all. And that's cool. So, okay, a couple last questions for you. One is how can busy entrepreneurs slice out more selfish time in their day every day?
Well, I think that's what I'm trying to say is you've got to make time for it every day and make it so that okay, here's the thing. Most entrepreneurs are struggling with becoming more disciplined And that's a big thing for people. I get it. But when it comes to fun, sometimes you have to let it flow. Like, I really believe that there's moments where you just need it. Like, maybe you didn't schedule your fun for today, but guess what? You're feeling like you need it. You got to make it happen. So I make sure that I fit in a little bit of fun each and every day, but that looks different. Like I said, all the time. It could be a full day, it could be an hour, it could be 20 minutes, but at least start to identify like what those things might be and start integrating them into your week. Now, you probably can't just turn around and tomorrow start having daily fun. I get that. That's a big leap, but at least do something for yourself, something that makes you feel like carefree. And if you don't know what that is, because I've been there, I started to think like, what did I like before I was a parent and a spouse and a business owner? And I came up with volleyball because that's something I played as a kid. I played in high school, made me really happy. And it's almost like muscle memory. I joined this team that I didn't know anyone in a beach league. And I showed up day one. It's 1 hour a week, guys. This isn't a lot. Okay. And all of a sudden, it just felt like I was back in my 17-year-old self. And I felt like free and fun. And it reminded me of a time in my life where I had no responsibility. So try to think back to like a moment like that in your life and reconnect with that thing that made you feel free.
Yeah. I have a drum set next to me in my office. It's an electronic drum set, which I have not been using lately. And I should, because the thing about learning a new sport or a new language or a musical instrument is it's so meditative because you only think about what you're doing. Right. For me, it's CrossFit because when you're there, it hurts and you're counting reps. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is just kind of off your head. So it's like my form of meditation. I remember talking to my spiritual coach once. She's like, "Do you meditate?" I'm like, "Yeah, I go to CrossFit." She's like, "That's not meditation." I go, "But it is." Because let me tell you, when you're there counting your 30 burpees and you're in pain because your heart rate's just through the roof and you're on that like 19th burpee and you're wondering how you're going to get through it all, that's all you can think about is like, am I going to go one leg up this time? Am I going to jump up? Am I going to rest when I'm down? It's like all the distractions in your life outside of that moment. So for me, it's like drums and it's CrossFit, could be actual meditation, although I'm not really good at it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not either. I mean, I do in yoga, we call what you're describing moving meditation, where you're doing a movement that's takes so much of your concentration that it's almost as if you're meditating because you only have one thought in your head at a time. And that's how I started in yoga because it was so hard for me. I hated it. I love it now, but I hated it then because I couldn't do it without getting distracted, which would make me fall out of the position. And the fact that I had to hold the position is what made me think about just one thing instead of 1,000. And then I would come home after and be like, "Oh, I feel so relaxed," because my brain actually had a vacation for an hour from all the clutter. So I totally get what you mean.
yeah, totally. Okay, so then really quickly, your book is out. So tell us about the book and who it's for.
So, selfish is a superpower is for anyone who feels like they have completely lost who they are and how to figure out how to make them happy before anyone else. If you're looking for a reason, a permission, this is kind of a grant of permission. Like, you guys, go do something for you. Be you. Put yourself before your kids for a minute. If you need that permission, this book is for you because it's going to give you permission on every single page. It's available on barnesandnoble.com and on my website, jessicadennehy.com. And I really think it's a mix of me telling my story and how I did this for me with the strategies I've used. But I really just want to showcase like what is possible if you allow yourself to get a little more selfish, how you can change your life and how that will also change the life of your family and the dynamic within the people that you love between you and them and your job and everything. So if you're looking for that permission or inspiration, this book's definitely for you.
Awesome. Okay. So one last question. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
I think just freedom. Like I think about myself running down the beach with my pink hair blowing in the wind and me just being like, the world is full of possibility and I can do whatever I want at any moment. And that's what I think of.
I love it. So if people want to go online to find you, where can they go?
I'm on all the social media networks at the Jessica Dennehy, most actively on Instagram. or you can go to my website, jessicadennehy.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.